Hello, and thank you all for watching my video. My name is Viviana Correa, and today I'm going to present research where I am looking at whether we can use fruit traits to predict mutualistic versus antagonistic interactions between frugivores and seeds. And this is a collaborated research with several colleagues in Brazil, Colombia, and here in the US. As most of you know, vertebrates disperse seeds of approximately 70 to 95% of woody plant species in tropical forests. And as you know already, so seed dispersal is a very important ecological process where the frugivores contribute to shape the composition of plant communities. They contribute to expand the range of species and also to increase gene flow among populations. And in turn, fruit is a very important resource for frugivores that provides energy and helps them to achieve all the metabolic functions. Now, for a long time, researchers have been debating whether there are seed dispersal syndromes, and this concept was first introduced in the 80s, and what it argues is that frugivores select sets of correlated fruit traits and that those traits match the frugivore's behavior, the morphology, and the physiology. And because frugivore seed dispersal enhances the fitness of both plants and animals, then it is argued that the seed dispersal mutualism is maintained through natural selection. Now, in a seminal work, Silvia Lomascolo and colleagues actually provide evidence of the existence of seed dispersal syndromes. Particularly, they demonstrate that the bird syndrome is characterized by fruits that don't have a smell, so are non-odorous, have high contrast against the canopy or against the background, and then those fruits that are consumed by birds are selected by birds tend to be smaller, softer, and darker in color. And interestingly, in contrast, they found that the bat syndrome is characterized by larger fruits that are harder and lighter in color, so they have low contrast and tend to be aromatic. So, and one thing that is interesting is that this only explains 42% of the variance in fruit characteristics. So what this means is that there is great variability in fruit traits in natural ecosystems. Now, the question is, well, is there a fish syndrome? And why is this important? Well, it is because there are nearly 300 fish species that eat fruits and seeds. Half of them are distributed in the tropics, and they disperse, or actually they consume and most likely disperse seeds of nearly 600 neotropical plant species. And it has been demonstrated that fish and water have different seed dispersal patterns. So the patterns of the position and movement of seeds are different. And what is interesting is that fish can serve both as seed dispersers and seed predators. Another thing that is interesting about fish is that they evolved, at least in South America, fish evolved during the diversification of the angiosperms, and they are much older than most of the other vertebrate groups within assemblages in South American wetlands. So this brings a question on whether frugivorous fish contribute to shape fruit trait evolution in wetlands via natural selection. And if that is the case, can we use fruit traits to predict mutualistic versus antagonistic interactions? So we conducted a study in the Pantanal wetland, which is located in central Brazil. We sampled both fish and plants in the riparian flooded forest, in the Cambarasal, which is a monodominant flooded forest with Bochysia divergens, and in flooded savannas. And we assess fruit traits both in terms of morphology and nutrient composition, and then also fish diets. So we quantified the identity and amounts of intact and masticated seeds. Okay, now these are the morphological traits that we measure for 50 plant species and over 1,000 individual fruits and seeds. We assess characteristics of the diaspora, the seed, and as well as macronutrients of both diasporas and seeds. And then we look at fish diets during 4 years in the flood season, 12 fish species and over 1,000 individual fish. In red are values for 2014, which is the results I'm going to show you today. And notice that there are cases of seed dispersal, seed predation, and a few cases of fruits that were not consumed by fish. One of the things that we looked at was trying to size phylogenetic signal in the morphological traits. And out of the different traits that we assessed, there was only a few that where we were able to detect phylogenetic signal, and you can see that through these red dots based on the Moran index. So now, these are the methods that we use to try to predict seed dispersal from fruit traits. To account for phylogenetic signal, we did a principal coordinate analysis on the plant species phylogenetic tree that was generated in APE, and then we extracted 5 eigenvectors that account for 33% of variance. And then we used machine learning classification algorithms, particularly random forest and linear discriminant analysis. And because of our observations are based on diets, then we have an unbalanced sample size, so an unbalanced number of cases, so we use a correction. And we use 70% of the data as training and 30% for for testing. Now, this is very important because the assumption is that if the model can correctly identify cases of seed dispersal based on fruit traits, then I will interpret that as selection by fish. So these are the results of random forest. This is again 2014 data only, and we are not including nutrient composition here. What you can see is that random forests are able to identify a set of characteristics that are important at classifying seed dispersal and seed predation. That includes shape, buoyancy, and size. Now, here is the model precision. So, random forests have high accuracy, and they're actually able to predict seed dispersal over seed predation in a pretty high percentage. And the same was the case for linear discriminant analysis, where the cases of seed dispersal versus seed predation were even higher. Now, to the question, do frugivorous species pose selective pressure on fruit traits in wetlands? The answer is yes. And also morphological fruit traits seem promising at predicting seed dispersal and selection by fish. Now, the characteristics that seem more important at predicting this selection are the shape of both diaspora and seeds, as well as diaspora buoyancy and seed size. And these are characteristics related to limitations of the gap size, but also where the fish can encounter the fruits. The next steps are to remove correlated variables to assess interspecific and multi-year differences using the full data set, analyze other traits including nutrients and color, look for alternative classification methods, and alternative methods to account for phylogenetic signal. Thank you very much.